Oh, yeah.
Me and him was already talking about it.
I had
Year 1030.
so we had
No,
one of my flight surgeons had to commandeer KC 135 Stratotanker because a Navy guy, a resting cable, the carrier he was
I said, well, and David said, we want to
no,
this is where we're at. Well,
no C-130, nothing there to care about.
now the live stream is on.
So we had to call, we're like, what are we support assist?
All right, Deborah, you ready?
Well, let me get 1 second.
And so he flew them from Diego Garcia to Germany.
Yes.
Great. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. We'll start with the roll call.
Sheena Martinez, District 1.
Houston Marchman, District 2.
Bill King, District 3.
David Mers Jr. for District 4.
Robert Lee for District 5.
And Darren Schroeder, Mayor. We're all here. All right, next item. If you'll please stand with me for the pledges of allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. First to the American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We have Pastor Doug Steiner from Discover Church for our invocation, please.
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you and we praise you. We give you all glory and honor. We ask tonight, Father God, we pray that in a world of chaos, in a world of device, and Father, that you would just bring peace. Father, I pray for the leadership of Castroville, for this council, that you would give them, lead them and guide them and direct them in everything they do, Father. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item is citizens' comments. If you'd like to speak for citizens' comments, please come up, state your name and address for the record, and let's please keep comments to 3 minutes.
Arnie DeLossie, 109 River Bluff in Castroville. Real quick, just a report on the tour to Castroville, which was last Saturday. We set all kind of new records for a lot of things. There's the tour registration, and then the American Boat Sport Association does their own, but we've been intertwined for like the last 7 years. For us, we had 532 total registrants. There were 205K and 73 10K, 180 30-mile bicycle riders, 79 60-milers. And considering all the volunteers we have scattered from Lacoste to 9 miles farther out in the city zip code of Atascosa to 2 in town, and the people working in the park, we had about another 70 sponsors on top of that. And it included everything from ROTC students at Medina Valley, railroad crossing guards, 17 ham operators, part of the Baptist church, about 20 or so at the tent, and then the park staff. And I would say the park staff and the street staff in particular, in getting everything prepared out around a community inside the city and down there, they've been over backwards, and they ought to be given all kind of kudos kind of thing. I don't know how many of you saw or did not see the shirt. This was the front of it.
Oh, nice.
It was designed by
Very nice.
Darren Ham. And on the back are the sponsors. The ones at the top are big dollars. This year we had the first time ever an exclusive title sponsor for $2,500. All the rest of them, the price totals right below it, are $1,000 or more. And the rest of them anywhere from $500 down to $100. So that is still out there. We're still having a few bills coming in. There'll be a big thank you ad. It's a half page in the paper, but I did not get all the names. That just didn't change from last year to this year. So it's going to be next week, which is all set up with them. But just wanted to thank everybody that's participated in it. The police actually had one of their new officers running the 5K in his police t-shirt, not his uniform.
Awesome.
And then we had 2 police officers down there all day helping, so everything went very, very smoothly. And next year, it's on April the 4th, 2026. So thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Arnie. All right. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Tammy Alexander, 516 Vienna. Good evening. There are 2 items I would like to address this evening. One, on February 12th, I submitted an open records request for the city to provide me an electronic copy of all the letters and public comments provided to the city, mayor, members of city council, Simple City, and any other city employees, officials, in both support and opposition to the proposed downtown master plan, comprehensive plan, and UDO. This request included all forms of communications to include but not to be limited to emails, text messages, and comments submitted online. On February 14th, I was asked to clarify my request. I sent a follow-up email that the request was for all information since the Simple City contract began on September 2023 until today. Specifically, the request was for communication referenced in city council meetings by mayor, city council, Brianna, and other city staff. Basically, all the correspondence the city attorney referenced as being subject to open records request at the February 11, 2025 city council meeting. While some correspondence have been provided, the amount of information provided to me does not come close to the amount of correspondence references by the mayor and members of the city when the question of support of the zoning changes is discussed. In my opinion, it appears as though either the correspondence often referenced doesn't exist or the city has failed to fully comply with my open records request. Number 2, in my opinion, the contract the city has with Simple City needs to end effective immediately. On September 26, 2023, City Council voted 5-0 on a motion by Councilman Carey and a second by Councilman Mers to approve the contract to Simple City not to exceed $500,000. As of today, the city has spent more than $525,000, and I could not find it. I might have missed it, but I could not find any city council action authorizing the additional cost. In addition, the current contract for additional services based on a monthly rate plus expenses appears to have been authorized by Brianna. In November 2024, Simple City provided the city of Castroville with draft documentation for review and approval. This should have, in my opinion, ended the contract. However, the city continued using them with a monthly service contract with no apparent end, while the city continues to work through significant changes that in many ways actually look more like the CZO that the city has been working hard to discredit and replace with a completely different type of zoning in opposition to a large number of Castroville citizens and residents. I encourage City Council to do the right thing here and end the contract. Ask Simple City for all of the work product the city has paid for. Thank Simple City for the work they have done and move on. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Tammy. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Hi, Joel South, 602 Berlin Street. I'd also like to talk about 9B on the agenda. I kind of ditto what my sister said there about the not spending any more money in that contract. $520,000+ is a lot of money. So I think we have enough information that our city employees and our boards can take this on. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Hi, Valerie Youngman and my husband David live at 218 Alvena Street. We own a home here at 412 Paris Street. My remarks also are referencing agenda item 9B, Simple City Contract. Following council's original intent for hiring Simple City to streamline, simplify, revise the CZO, it seems to have evolved into a cash cow for Simple City and a complete travesty at the expense of the Castroville citizens. Perhaps certain council members need to be reminded they were elected or appointed to represent your constituents, their values, their concerns, and their welfare, and that our tax dollars were not meant to be spent like monopoly money. Clearly, there was poor planning in creating this contract with Simple City, and the overuse of our citizens' money needs to end. This agenda item is the perfect time for an off-ramp. Please vote to discontinue the contract with Simple City. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Claudia Holzhaus. My husband and I live at 306 Madrid Street. I sound like a broken record, but I keep saying the same thing. My husband and I are against density, we're against ADUs, and we are very puzzled as to why city leaders, several city leaders, decided to propose and endorse all these zoning changes. Another thing is we pay city taxes, and we were not notified of the latest changes by Simple City, and therefore we could not review the changes. We are all these changes, whether we live in that area or not. So in my opinion, we should all have been sent letters and be informed on what is going on and how these changes are being changed. Also, as to date, I have never gotten the answer as to who and when all these people wrote in or called in that wanted this density and these ADUs. I have not ever spoken to one citizen that wanted that. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you can supply that information to us.
I think that was a part of the open records request. That should be provided as well. Right. We'll talk about that once we get to that item, if that's okay. I think it's really important that we do get these right. If we didn't get all the information out for an open records request, we absolutely need to supply that. There's no question about that. Please.
Hi, my name's Nicole Schreiner. I'm at 118 Carm Street. And for a different perspective, being someone who doesn't own a home yet in Castroville, but would like to, I think one of the things as people are considering living in this area, making decisions about whether they want to stay or whether they want to come in, is this question of, is Castroville a place that you can work in and earn enough money that you can also at some point in time buy a piece of property, get a house? Or is Castroville going to kind of continue along this pathway of you're either commuting and you live here, or you have inherited wealth, or you have, this is your retirement place. And so to that end, my perception going through the things with Simple City and the work that they've done and an increase in density is actually providing more opportunity for housing, more opportunity for business, and especially in a small town where we have so few employers of major industry, that increasing that economic diversity and those layers creates stability, both for the people who live here now and the people who would consider staying or consider wanting to come in. And so I know that it's something different, but I think it's a good goal to have. And also for the folks who are saying that, you don't want property taxes to go up, you don't want increased density, but also, I haven't heard anyone say, as a part of this package, since we don't want our taxes to go up, but we don't want commerce to come in and we don't want new families to come in, let's go ahead and release some of the expectations that we have for city services. If we want services and we want the ability to work and live in the same place, then this is I think, this is a very reasonable answer. And we've already invested so much, right? $500,000 is not nothing. So getting it across the line, at least finishes the job that we started. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
Hi, my name is Mickey Holzhaus. My wife Denise and I live at 514 Washington here in Castroville. Got two items I'd like to bring up. One is the contract with Simple City. I understand that when it was officially received, the contract was somewhere around $232,000. As it morphed into something greater, the number $500,000 was a number that I believe, it's my understanding, was voted on not to exceed. We now have expenses over $520,000. I think we should stop throwing good money after bad. What they did, one could argue whether it's good information or not good information. The fact is, it's been done. Most of the citizens that have been to these meetings have educated Simple City on the whole process. Give an example was teaching them that 2 doors in the front house of a porch was not a duplex. It was because of ventilation that these old houses were built that way. That's just one simple example. There are many others. So please, I recommend to council, but please cease the contract with Simple City and end the bleeding. The other issue is ADUs. 2 council meetings ago, I asked why ADUs were proposed from something that has always existed in the ordinance, but with a variance. But now it's been changed to with a special use permit. A variance is very difficult to get, very difficult. And I've read the handicap on that and in your records. And a special use, even though you have to petition the people that live within 200 feet of that property and get their input on it, it's still relatively easy to get. To date, I don't believe there's been any study done on the infrastructure, whether our current water system can support the density that's proposed by ADUs, and the electricity, can it support it? We know full well that transformers, if they needed to be replaced because there's more load on that transformer, if they need to replace, it will be at the expense of the city. It will be at the expense of us taxpayers. We didn't sign up for that. We didn't sign up for it. We have a social contract with the city when we bought our property and built our homes. And an ADU should only be allowed with a variance. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments?
I don't know if I need that really. I'm Jenny Andermatt. Vince and I live at 1201 Alamo here in town. I want to speak very briefly about 9B. It reads, discussion and appropriate action on continuing the Simple City contract for the UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. My response is no. And not to be frivolous, but it's on a coffee mug in my house. I use it whenever somebody's getting ready to ask me for something. It says, pour yourself a big old cup of nope. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else like to speak for citizens' comments? All right. All right. Next item is on the consent agenda. We're removing one of these for further modification. So on the consent agenda, we have minutes for February 25th, 2025, regular called meeting, and minutes for March 13th, special called meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Would you like to remove them from the consent agenda?
Yes,
Okay, which would you like to remove from the consent agenda?
the 25 February.
Okay. We will remove that. So on the consent agenda is only the minutes for March 13th, 2025.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item is, and just for clarification, March 25th, we will come back on the next council meeting. So the next item is minutes for February 25th, 2025, regular called meeting. Councilman Lee, you had questions, comments?
Just two corrections on page 5, under B, discussion and adoption of comprehensive plan. This is what you get when I read everything. About 10 lines down, under the word Schroeder, it says, the thoroughfare plan was part of the comprehensive plan and needed to move forward this, that, day, update. I think it should read with that update instead of this, that. And under, do you have that, Deborah?
No,
Okay.
I hadn't found the line yet, I'm sorry.
Okay, on B, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. It starts with this, that.
Okay, you're on page 5?
That's correct. I think that should be with.
Probably is, I'll just have to, I still don't see it, I'm sorry.
Same number of letters, but, and you got that?
See it.
Under which item is this minute?
It's under
It's on
the,
page
this,
5B, discussion on adoption of comprehensive.
Because there's not a,
On the printed off, it's on page 7.
okay, I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's no B.
Page 7.
That's the city administrator's
Well, on
report.
the minutes itself, it's 5, so.
Oh, I see, but in here
Okay,
it's 7,
I'm
sorry.
reading at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
The minutes themselves.
Okay, and you're,
Go down about 10 lines, right under Mayor Schroeder's name, it says this, that.
oh, I
Left
see,
edge.
yes,
I believe that should be with.
okay, got it,
And on the next one, C,
right,
on the end of the
1930.
third line, I don't think we had the CCO at 10:30, probably was 19:30.
I did, I caught that. After.
That's it.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve with the listed changes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, next item. Scott, will you bring up that presentation for me, please? So on the mayor's report, it says report on financial state of the city. I want to be clear, this is only talking about the general fund versus the utility fund. The utility fund is more complex. It's a bit more of a mess. And this is something that we have walked into after decades of interesting decisions. And, we're having to deal with that. That will be on the next mayor's report. So we'll go into that, not hiding from it, just it takes a lot more to put it together. So I wanted to put this together specifically on the general fund because there were a lot of questions from people about where do we actually stand with our finances? How well are we, how carefully are we spending it? How well are we doing? So one of the things that I'm going to talk about is, and the reason this came up was because our financial advisor, as he was going through the agenda with us last meeting, he was commenting about our financial state. We were looking to issue debt for bonds, and he was saying you are in the best financial state that you've been in a very long time. And so I wanted to quantify that and show you what that looks like. Much in the same way that your personal finances, when you look at your personal finances, how do you determine how your personal finances are? Do you make enough money to do the things you have to do, plus the things that you want to do? Is there money left at the end? Do you have money in savings? How is your credit rating? Your credit rating is a combination of how much credit you have, you've used, how much you have available. It's your debt to income ratio. There's a lot of factors that go into this. So I wanted to bring these up as it pertains to the city. All right, next slide, please.
No, it's not on the other side.
All right, is that showing now? All right, great. So one of the things, honestly, in a city, you look at how much revenue you're bringing in. It's not all about the bottom line dollar, but the bottom line dollar is what you spend to make life better as a whole. This is a combination of all of our money coming together in one place. So are your revenues increasing faster than inflation. That demonstrates the financial health of the city. How resilient is your local economy? Are you too dependent on one item versus another item, or another one? How do you, so with a city, with your personal savings, you can't really have too much. It doesn't hurt anything if you have too much. Kids just don't get as much if you have too much in savings. With a city, because this is our combined money, you want to have a good amount of savings to be able to weather through any kind of financial storms or any kind of anomalies, unexpected expenses. But if you have too much in savings, then that's actually bad, because then you're not spending the money that people are giving in their taxes. How is your debt to income ratio? And are you investing where people want investments? So some of these are subjective, some of them are fairly well objective. Let's go into the next item. So I wanted to look at this, and I wanted to take it specifically from the audits. So these are confirmed audited numbers. And I wanted to look back 5 years and 10 years. So I took the audited numbers from fiscal year 2024, and I wanted to show you here the rate of inflation from 2014 to 2019. This is based on the consumer price index, was about 9.65% cumulative. The scary thing is, from 2019 to 2024, I think we've all experienced this. Inflation was more like 25, almost 26%. In certain items, it's been 50 to 100%, but overall, it's been 20 to 25%. The revenues, if you look at the revenues for the general fund specifically, had increased from 2014 to 2019 by almost 50%, and then from 2019 to 2024, 100%. One of the anomalies that happened in right before the 2019, we had a new, very large retailer that built a place here. Many of you might see it on your way out and shop there regularly. So that was one thing that did give us a nice boost to that. And then you see some of the other successes that we've had from there. So the general fund revenue, so when you look at where are your income and where are your expenses, your income, your tax generated income, the general fund is primarily tax generated. It comes from your property tax and your sales tax. There's some other things, court fees, and like tickets and that kind of stuff. You have things from the parks, from the library, from other services that you provide, but the vast majority of it actually comes from sales tax and property tax. So what you're looking at here is, in 2014, sales tax was the bulk of the revenue that we had. As it started going to to fiscal year 2019, it was roughly half. It was roughly even with the two. And now the sales tax, even though our sales tax has gone up pretty substantially, the property tax has edged its way there. So it's in times of distress, in times of issues. During COVID, I know I talked to a couple of the mayors that I serve with on ACOG, on LMO, Area Community of Governments, and they got hit pretty hard by COVID because people weren't shopping in their big retailers that were in there. So their economy wasn't quite as resilient when it came to that. Ours actually thrived because we don't have a lot of those major retailers. So we're not so much dependent on that. So we've got a pretty healthy mix of economy here. There's definitely some holes in our economy. There's some holes in our housing availability, but overall it's pretty resilient. Let's go on to the next one. So when we look at total revenues versus fund balance, this is looking at how much do we have in savings. Again, you want to have a good, healthy amount. I think I put the numbers in my notes that I don't have there. Do you see the notes that are on there? I think I put
just under 33%. 120 of 365 days. Is that what you're asking?
Right. So we were looking at how many days of fund balance do we have in revenues, but basically, so you look at what did I say that 120 days was what percent?
33%.
Okay, so 33%. 120 days is your minimum. That's really what you want to have on hand just in case. So in 2014, we had 55% in fund balance versus our total revenues. By FY 2019, we had 77%. And we have spent that down a little bit, down to 73%, just because it makes sense. Again, when you have too much in savings, that means that you're not spending the money that people are paying in taxes. So it's still incredibly healthy. It's nearly double what it needs to be. So we've got some good buffer. We know that there are some potential issues that could cost us additional money. And so we wanted to make sure that we had enough in there. So in terms of fund balance, we have been spending, we spent a lot of pennies, but we've been pinching every single one of them. Next item. The other thing, when you look at your total debt to income, this is the same thing as your personal income tax. And this is looking at how much are you spending per month, per year, versus how much are you making on your debt service. In FY 2024, or 2014, sorry, the debt service was 8.82%. It had gone down by the time we hit FY 2019, it was at 5.81%. And as of FY 2024, we were sitting at 7.39. This is after we had actually issued a pretty decent amount of debt to handle some of the road repairs that we did throughout Country Village and some of the other areas. So it's still healthy when you look at what the creditors look for, and all of this available is, all of this information is pretty well available online. You can find what they're looking for, and we can get into more detail with the financial advisor about where these go. But they say that a healthy debt service to percentage of revenues is between 10 and 15%. So we're still very well underneath that. So we still have the ability to borrow. We have not exercised that. What we found was we were building up the fund balance, and we had issued debt when interest rates were low, and then interest rates started spiking, so we stopped our spending, and we leveraged the interest. So we leveraged that to make additional revenues from the money that we had in savings. So we stopped the borrowing, we started the investing, more specifically into safe investments that had a higher percentage of return. And as things start to settle out, we'll look at expending some more of those, again, carefully and responsibly. And then the recent investments. So some of the recent investments that we've made pretty significant investments into our police department. When Chief Kohler started as full-time chief, he had looked at a lot of the things that our police didn't have. We had all of our radar equipment was out of date. I think we only had 2 working units, and they hadn't been calibrated in quite some time. So we had reinvested in that. We had some expired body armor, which I didn't realize that body armor expires, but it actually does. And so we had looked at a lot of different investments that we can make specifically to make life safer, better for our police department. We invested in some new software that helped them track that better. We had our district attorney, Mark Habe, in a few months ago talking about how those investments have paid off and how the attention to detail with our officers, the new quality of officers, the new level of sophistication that Chief Kohler brings, how our conviction rate had gone up fairly substantially. When we went from a very low conviction rate to a very favorable conviction rate, and that's because of the training that's going into them, the level of sophistication that Chief Kohler brings to us, and we've since added an additional 2 officers. We also made a lot of improvements in Lions Park that had sat without improvements for decades. We had invested into that, and pretty much everything we did there was done in coordination with grants that were available through companies, through individuals, we'd done some through was it a CDBG grant that we got on the splash pad, I think it was. There were some.
Yeah, we got a Texas Parks and Wildlife grant, but I don't believe we used one on the splash pad.
Okay.
Double check.
So most of what we had invested there was things that were grant supported. We did a lot of improvements in Regional Park. We did the ADA compliant play set. We did the new restrooms. We did some lighting to improve the ability. Our soccer participation had gone from I think we had 400 players, and within 2 years it had increased to over 700 players. And so they're trying to figure out how do we support that, extend our hours. And so that was one of the investments that we had made. So we continue to find these areas. You can see the progress that's being made finally on the community center. So that's moving along. We had coupled that with grant money and have been working on that. We did a bunch of major road repairs. We basically repaired all of the roads in Country Village. We've done some other major repairs throughout the city. Again, we kind of drew that to a bit of a close because the interest rates were going up and the cost of construction had nearly doubled for some of the recent projects. And so we decided that we were going to put the brakes on that a bit. And then with the planning efforts and this wasn't just, so we spent money on Simple City, we spent money on the planning efforts for our drainage, to update our drainage plans, to update our road construction plans. We put a lot of, last year was a lot of sausage making. We were looking at how do we build a firm foundation that we can build on in subsequent years so that we've got the details that we need for that. And that's put us into a good position for receiving additional funding, specifically on things like our drainage. Our drainage, I think we have $80 million worth of identified drainage issues that we've got to deal with an annual budget of $6 million. Obviously, that's not going to happen without some sort of assistance. I think that was it.
Question.
Yeah, questions?
Yes, general fund revenue, I see you got sales tax, property tax, which a quick thing says those total to about $3,882,000, give or take. Yet the revenue that same year was $6,283,777,
right,
which is about 2.4 million more, which is obviously more than traffic tickets. So is some of that money borrowed money that's in the general fund revenue box?
Some of that, so the reason that I separated out specifically the sales tax and property tax, because those are the biggest sources of revenue in there. And with some of the revenues that we have in there are from things like the park, but pretty much all of the revenue that is generated from the park is reinvested into the park. And so most of the other revenue that you'll see in there, it's not something that can directly impact the bottom line. It's revenue that's coming in from grants and from, does that include, and I didn't dig into that as much of the details on those because I knew that it was variable and most of it is offset by costs.
Okay, well, I mean,
there's no borrowed money in revenue.
Is pretty big.
Right.
The question is whether or not there's borrowed money in revenue. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I believe there's grant
that will not
money.
show up as revenue.
I'm sorry, what?
That will not show up as
Okay.
revenue.
Because the $2.4 million difference between property and sales tax totals and the total revenue. So
yeah,
mostly that's grants, over $2 million in grants plus park fees and
those are all available in the audit. I didn't dig.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Any other questions? Great. Anybody else? Great. All right, next item is the City Council liaison reports. We'll start with the airport on April 7th.
So last night, the Airport Advisory Board met and the airport manager stated that they were able to close out AT&T poles being removed, updating of the security system, and they're expanding their fence. That'll be from the gate to Dream Flights and Skydive. With manual gates to slide open. This is to control traffic going on to the flight line, and all that is being paid for by leftover grant money. So it's not costing anything. They're just spending what they had left. Mike briefed that he did 2 presentations at Lacoste Elementary on aerospace, aeronautics, drones, all that kind of stuff. The budget process has started. They'll be giving, him and Brianna will be giving City Council a briefing on all their proposed expenses and projects that they would like to have done. During the past year, they had 2,300 takeoff and landings. We have, the fuel price has remained the same since July 2024. We have the best fuel prices in the area. Apparently, BGIS is no longer in line of work for our fuel system, and they're the ones that do all the work on it and everything. So they're looking at possibly going with Basco out of Dallas to replace them, but more to come on that once that gets in the channels. The farmer's lease is up for renewal this December, so we'll have to make sure we track that and see if he wants to do his option to renew. Major Moat from the Air Force has submitted a VOR approach training for out there at the airport. They wouldn't, the T-38s and that from Randolph would not land here. It's just for them to do training. They're in discussion with the FAA on that.
I'm
And
sorry,
they-
who was that?
Major Moat, M-O-A-T.
Okay,
Low altitude.
okay, got it.
And he said he let the FAA know they have over 1,500 pilots in training that needs this training. Everything's ramping up. The hydrologic study is out for bid through TxDOT. Right now, they have $200,000 unspent in grant money. So since that's governed through the USDA, it was recommended that we get with Tony Gonzalez to see if we can get that remaining $200,000 switched over to another possible airport project, like the STEM building or something like that. So we directed Mike to get with Arnie to start that discussion, to see if how we can get that done. There was a discussion on in-kind funds regarding like the work on the well out at the airport. And basically it was briefed that a fair market analysis was provided. And compared to all the numbers that have been calculated, it was said that $11,760 is what should be paid by parks to the airport. But the city shows in-kind well work of $34,000. It was asked if the airport gets a water bill, and nobody knew. And Scott was there, and he's like, I don't know. So that was just some of the questions that came up. Let's see here. The military ops agreement, we were told that Chuck Friesenhahn talked to the Air Force about this agreement, and they are finding that they have no finding of significant importance on this right now, so it's not being pushed as hard as it was initially. So, but that's it.
Okay, thank you. Next item is library on April 3rd.
Actually, there were two meetings of the library. There was the one on March 13th, and we haven't had a meeting since then that did this, and another one on the 3rd. And if you recall, I believe it was the March meeting, we installed a bunch of new people on the library, filling the positions. I will say, after serving on many boards, commissions, and observing many boards and commissions, I was extremely impressed with the library. I was very impressed with the library. The staff member, Miss Farley, is amazing, and all the members on that board are raring to go to make it the best. It's already the best library around, but to make it even better. As you may know, we lost our accreditation last year, and a few other things had fallen through the crack. When Ms. Farley came on board, she took the bull by the horn, so to speak, and got the policy development done, the accreditation back in order, coordination with various organizations around here that deal with libraries. They brought forth their budget proposals at this last meeting, and essentially they were asking for mostly a cost of living increase to their operation from what they had before, which sounds quite reasonable. There were a couple of things on there with a self-checkout system for books, and another one to put a machine on the copier, a pay-as-you-need on the copy machine, but that was going to be expensive because it takes a lot of staff time to come up and do copies for people and or make change, which they frequently don't have. But they stuck with the self-checkout system for books that they want to pursue. So They've got a great budget proposal. They've got facts and figures on how many people come in and all the programs they've got, and they have a wealth of programs. I was very impressed with how much the library staff does and how they reach out and support the community. That's it.
Great. Thank you, sir. Next item is Historic Landmark Commission on March 18th.
The HLC met, they reviewed 2 properties and issued certificate of appropriateness on both of them. One was 1410 Gentile and the other one was 1207 Angelo. They also had a presentation about the Unified Development Ordinances and, from Salina and related to historic structures and so forth. And then also had a discussion about compliance issues, ongoing compliance issues and the city's efforts to try to get some of those taken care of. That was it.
Great. Thank you. Then the park on March 19th.
So the Parks Board did meet. They approved their February minutes. There was continued discussion about the future Lions Park layout, but no action was taken. They have a number of projects underway in the Parks Department, including a Bat Box Eagle Scout project, which I think might be done by now. And construction is underway at the community center. Brianna Soto delivered a presentation on how the parkland and open space dedication in current developments and in our current ordinances works. She requested that the board, or advised the board, to add plans for the parkland dedication in Westheim, add that to their master plan because they don't currently have any suggestions on what could be done there. She then continued into a presentation on how parkland and open space dedication would work in the current UDO draft and emphasized how it would actually have its own zoning, which makes it harder to slip out of sight during the plat process than it is right now. The Parks Board asked about how the Parks Department is represented on the DRC, the Design Review Committee. Ms. Soto confirmed that the Parks Director sits on it, and in a move that made me go, eek, suggested that the council liaison could be a fallback option if he was unavailable. The Parks Board requested that the Parks Master Plan be referenced directly in the UDO. It's in a few spots, but there are other places that relate to it, both in the parks dedication portion and in the trail standards. And the UDO includes national park standards that could be referenced more directly in the UDO as well. And the Parks Board motioned and approved with a 5-0 vote that all developers over a certain size be required at some point in the process to see a presentation on land trusts or conservation easements and the tax benefits thereof. And I think they recommended that that go in the development agreement policy. They hope that having them be more aware of the potential benefits to them of land trusts and conservation easements might encourage developers to award more choice land instead of waste land around the edges.
Perfect. Did they talk about, because we've looked at a lot into land trusts and trying to find ways to basically slow down development around our borders by having people put them in land trusts. And one of the things that people have asked about is, so why would I do that for my descendants and take them away, take that ability away from them? And I know that there is funding. I'd looked at a bunch of different funding mechanisms with the Hill Country Alliance and with Alamo Area Community of Governments. I was never able to find a direct funding source that would allow them to realize some of the financial benefit of that. Not everybody looks for the financial benefit. If they have no descendants, I have. That's usually the way that big parkland gets dedicated. But for the ones that do, we were not able to find something successfully that would allow them to do that.
Yeah. So the recommendation actually came from the Friends of the Library with Patrick Connor.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he has a.
Friends of Regional Park.
Regional Park.
Did I say Friends of the Library?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, library in the brain.
Maybe he likes the library too. I don't know. But he may have something specific in mind. But I think part of what he was thinking and because he elaborated on this in the meeting, essentially, if we were paying them for the amount they could have developed something in the middle. So I think in his mind, it's coming from the city as one of the
He mentioned, well, he mentioned
incentives.
land trusts. He said there's land trusts out there.
Yes.
And that's
So
been a
I'm-
nebulous thing for me too, is who's writing the check? Right?
There have been times, so we did a whole day on this up in, gosh, I think we went to Fredericksburg for one of the Hill Country Alliance meetings, and we were talking to somebody that actually sets up those land trusts, and they happen on occasion. Saws many years ago used to basically buy water rights, and they would put them into trusts by doing that. We've not found anything. I've not found anything that's available. But if we can identify something like that, I think that it would be great to do that, not just for the developers for external money, but some of the landowners around that might be able to benefit from that as well. The more open land that we can preserve, the less we have to deal with.
Sounds like a future agenda item, maybe.
Yep. Okay.
I got a
That's where I was typing
question.
it.
During the Parks Board meeting, you mentioned about the community center. Did they mention anything about the pool hours, if it was going to be impacted and the access to the pool? Because I know we're getting into that area, that time.
Mm-hmm. I did not. It's possible they did. That was not in my notes.
Okay.
Nicole?
Well, this is a report on the liaison item, so either it was mentioned or not, but I can give you all a report later.
Okay.
I do have that information.
Because I have citizens coming and asking me, and
Yeah, I'll send a report.
I didn't know if they mentioned it in the meeting.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Send it
Okay.
to all of us.
Yeah.
Yep. They'll send it on blind copy so that we don't have interaction on it. Next item is P&Z for March 17th.
I don't think we have at that time, have a representative for that meeting.
Okay.
One question on that. So would I be, that's what Paul did.
Mhm.
We have a P&Z tomorrow night. Am I going to fill that role?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate if you're open to that.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Were you on P&Z on
Yes.
March 17th?
Yes.
You want to brief?
You want to brief? Okay. You want to be put on the spot? Okay.
Yeah.
You want to show your agenda?
We can do that on the next one.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Give you some time to prep.
Thank
Sure. All right. That is through the liaison reports. Next, we have discussion and action items. The first one is discussion and take appropriate action on city branding by adding signage to downtown historic corridor with a focus on Fiorillo Street and Paris Street. And Scott, I believe I don't see Darren Ham here, so I believe you're giving us. Well, and I'll bring up the reason that I wanted to make sure that we had this on here. Scott and I were talking about this. There have been a number of things that we've been informed about, and people have said, hey, we're looking at doing this, and what do you think about it, and getting our feedback on it. And I express that that's much different than giving an approval on something. So anytime you're changing your built environment, you're putting up new street signs, you're putting up new signage, you're doing something like that, that really should go through a very specific council approval process. Instead of just an update, hey, we're thinking about it, and then suddenly it's done. It's kind of a surprise. Don't love it, but that's why we wanted to have this. So do you have details on this one then?
Yeah, well, I've got what y'all have in your packet, and it talks about the basically 4 different types of signs that are being considered, and then it shows the locations of where those would be located. I think I can pull this up. Yeah, so this is what's in your packet. First, I want to highlight what the signs look like. So this is one that when we presented to council a couple weeks ago, y'all had stickers kind of put at your locations, and it had this logo on it with.
It died.
You just lost it.
I don't know. All right, this is what's in your packet. It's got the bird logo flying in flight. So this is the concept is just to give us a unique brand for the downtown area. I have no idea.
The light's green now.
Unplug it.
But
Isn't that little light's green?
yeah, I know. It's the big circle one.
As he's finding that, one of the things that stood out to me, I like the fact that he's looking at this. If you haven't been into Alsatian Oaks and looked at the signs that they're using, we took that as a first instance, and this was actually as we talked with different folks that were here when we did the Journey series and got that education, and then when we were talking to Simple City about how do we do things, how do we make small things that just start enhancing over time. And one of the things that we talked about was street signs. So the street signs that were installed into Alsatian Oaks, they were going to put up the plain metal signs, and we asked them, can you put up these? Can you make them look a little bit nicer? And these, the black poles that they've got here, that's the type of poles that they started using. They wanted to have street signs that were very specific to Alsatian Oaks. And we said, well, that's fine. We understand this is Alsatian Oaks, but it's also part of Castroville. So the street signs need to be reminiscent of Castroville. And we allowed a little tagger piece that would go on to say Alsatian Oaks. So always putting the city at the forefront with the different, if you call them subdivisions or different areas that are slightly different. That way we're having consistency and unification throughout the entire city.
Well,
Go ahead.
I just also remind you. So I believe at the last meeting, Darren Ham gave his update on tourism and that what he'd accomplished in the past 3 years. And so one of the items that is on our plate as far as future projects was improving signage, and a part of that also is the downtown master plans recently adopted. We want to start to identify projects that would then be executed that be in concert with that plan, so we can start to fulfill those elements. So this signage is all part of that. And you were going to say something.
Well, the one thing I was going to comment on is I think that we need to be really careful about. I get the stylized logo using in publications and going along with some of the other collateral material, but I think we need to be really careful about deviating from what is the actual logo for the city. And so when I see we've got the thing that is, and this is something I'd like to hear from Darren what his thought process on this was, but if we're putting up a signage that is not the logo and then we're putting up the signage that is the logo, why would we do something like that? And why not use the traditional Castroville emblem logo that's...
Well, I think part of it's because I should lean into Houston and your marketing experience, but part of it is you have the main brand, right, which is our city seal. And we do have that in a number of different places. But then you have other products that fall underneath that main brand, if you will. And that's part of what this downtown, we were trying to create kind of a look for the historic downtown area. That's where that bird in flight comes in. That's where this, what looks more like what do they call those coins? The challenge coin. That's kind of what this looks like to me, kind of a challenge coin look.
Right.
But these are sub brands, if you will. And the idea is to keep the color scheme similar, but to allow for these other products, if you will, because that's basically what you're doing is you're creating sub products under the master brand. But using nothing but the seal everywhere, it does get overused, right? You do want to be able to blend in other types of brand things that are complementary.
Well, I'd like him to bring back the proposal like that of if we are taking that approach, let's understand what the approach is and draw some bounds around that. Val, you had a question?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The brand with the bird on there, isn't that very reminiscent of what the Downtown Initiative Investors Group, what their branding logo looks like as well? I just want to make sure that we're not merging those two together and have Castroville very specific on the seal itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe we should spread that all across Castroville.
And the bird in flight, when I asked Darren Ham about this as well, so I had the same, a very similar concern, because I knew that they had started to use that. And he said, well, that was ours first. If you go look out that green wayfinding sign, there's a bird up on
It's a
it,
stork.
right?
It's a stork.
Right.
From there.
So-
Well, and remember, I had asked, what's the deal with the bird?
Right.
Well,
It's
the story
tradition.
goes all the way back to Alsace. It's good luck in all of that.
Right.
And that's why.
Right. There's a historic element.
They've been in this town since 1840.
Yeah, and so if that's the case, I'd rather see the bird, but it says Castroville Historic Downtown, than the challenge coin looking one. Because that tells me I'm in historic downtown. The challenge coin just says Castroville, Texas. It doesn't tell me I'm in historic.
From the Alsace district, the group of investors.
Correct.
Their logo, their branding is.
Mm.
So now we're seeing the city's gonna.
Yeah.
So I don't
So-
want it to be skewed. It does look like it's conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Well, so anything that we do, if you think about the things like the city should never align itself with one business or one set of businesses. It could be with an area is okay, but finding some sort of alignment. But with the city supporting any business or business group, it's not appropriate to do. But you might have some common elements between the two, where they found their roots in a lot of them were the original ones were Alsatian roots. They found that historic, and we have the same roots. And so when you have common roots, you shouldn't stay away from that common root just because somebody else is using it, but you don't align yourself with them for their benefit to the exclusion. We've got a lot of other business owners here, a lot of local business owners. We've got a lot of people that are,
Downtown, though, I mean, the majority of the businesses are predominantly owned by.
I think they have, I don't remember the last count, 6 or 7 out of all of
It's
them.
not,
It is not the majority, but there is definitely, yeah, no, but I agree with you. You don't align yourself with one business or one set of businesses because that's not a healthy economy and that's not a good strategy for a city. Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah, what you got?
So just for process, would the signage, since it is an historic district, also go through HLC and recommend it to us first?
so I have to, I have to check with Darren and see if he actually did a presentation to HLC. I know you go as the liaison. You're been on the board of Houston, so I don't know if y'all seen these or not. I know you showed them to the
We haven't
downtown
seen
group.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that anytime you're changing the built environment of the city, we just need to be really careful and take it very slowly and over communicate and to have discussions like this. Why are we doing these things? Does it make sense? And get a lot of input, especially from our boards, especially from HLC in a downtown. So you had a question?
What is the cost of all of that?
That is something that we would look at once it actually comes up.
As far as the,
Well, it says
He
budget.
says he's going to pay for it out of his existing budget.
Right, but that needs to come back. What's that?
We have signs that were just changed recently.
And that's-
We're gonna change them again?
No, the signs that he put up recently are reflected on this. And that was one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this up, because that happened. We had talked about it and then he put them up. And I appreciate the initiative, but they really need to come in front of council. They need to be vetted out before we actually pull the trigger. It's fine to talk about things and come up with ideas, but to actually make a change makes sense to have that go through a better vetted process.
Yeah.
Are you going to go down the table for council?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry, I opened it up a little bit too soon. I apologize. So,
Just waiting for your direction.
please,
Are you going to start here or somewhere else?
let's start over here.
All right, thank you. I think the bird looks terrific. I would not use it for Castroville. We don't have any storks within a bajillion miles.
We have one right
We don't have any storks within a bajillion miles.
Should we change that to a whistling duck?
Well, maybe
We have a lot of those.
grackle. But we have a lot of other things here that are recognized. We have Alsatian dancers and the St. Louis Church and other things like that are in our community, that if you looked at the sign, you could also see that represented somewhere in the community. I would not borrow something that we don't have. Yes, there's one on top of the Steinbach house on the wind vane, but I have, other than the one in the lobby out there, I haven't seen a stork anywhere else. But we see lots of other representations of what we have, and I think if we put it on signage, it needs to be something that is here, that we practice, that we do, that we promote, not. And it's a very good job. I like his proposal in here, and also wondered what the cost was. But since you're going to have to bring it back anyway, maybe some options.
I think it needs to come back with a cost to look
Yeah.
at these things and And it's good to improve the city piece by piece. That's a low cost item, but we still need to be pinching every penny. So, yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't really have strong opinions on the stork either way. On the round one, the challenge coin design, I was a little amused that the arrow pointing to where Castroville is obscures where San Antonio is.
Well, yeah, that's fine.
Of course.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, San Antonio is our largest suburb.
I think I'd kind of prefer to just see the seal of the city. I remember sitting out there during about a 90-minute discussion on what was going to be the standardized seal of the city.
Right. And for the benefit of the people that didn't hear that, we noticed that I think at the airport alone, we had, was it 5 different official seals? So each one had different elements, and we were trying to figure out what does the actual seal look like. This one is different than the one that we have on the pin. So we had gone through this discussion to determine what was the original actual seal. So that's context there. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Councilman King.
Bob, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on the stork issue. I don't like this stork, but if
That's
you
not
go
a-
to
that's not a stork.
Alsace, the one that was, if you go to Alsace, you have these stork nests on damn near every building in these old historic towns. And a lot of them have stork nest on them. So they build a metal frame, and then the stork builds their nest on these metal frames. So it's very, goes hand in hand with Alsace. We are the little Alsace of Texas. And when you look at those, immediately comes to mind what you see in Alsace. And the Wayfair signs that were, I know that's back when Marie was city manager, so I think it's when Jeff was mayor. And this sounds right, correct? Yeah. And so there's a lot of discussion and input in what was the proper type of Wayfair sign to direct people. And, we see these things, and biggest feedback I got back, they should have made the stork nest bigger. But I think that, so it's not just the stork itself, it's really the stork on these nests on top of buildings. That's kind of the good luck, and that's what you see over there. And it, again, if we're trying to promote ourselves as a little Alsace of Texas, I think it would be good. And I also agree, to me, those other, I guess we call them challenge points, but I mean, the little logo we have here to me would fit better. Just as first.
Okay.
Next.
Councilman Marchman.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So my 2 cents would be, we have an historic landmark commission. And we have Selena, our historic officer. And the first thing I would say, run it through the process. Because she would read, they would give us their recommendations based on the code and what, we're supposed to be doing. That said, when you think about what you see all over town, the HLC, Priscilla, did a lot of work with putting signs, the little house on historic homes. That's everywhere.
Right.
That's up there. And in context, in a marketing sense, the more you have of that impression, the more it sinks. But I would, my 2 cents would be, we run it through HLC, take that recommendation, and then see what Darren comes back.
Sure. I'd also honestly, when you look at the people that are kind of the stewards of the city, look to the Castroville Conservation Society as a part of that HLC.
Yeah.
Maybe invite them to the HLC.
Of course.
For historic preservation, this is more, a lot of this is more area enhancements, but it should fit within the rules.
But I do even, I'm not Alsatian.
Right.
But that stork is. And I wouldn't feel comfortable saying, that's been around here for almost 180 years.
Right.
I think that has a place somewhere.
Absolutely. Okay.
So I like Bob Lee's, input regarding like the Alsatian dancers or something. Because like when you go around to these businesses, they have these signs out that are hand painted by our high school, the dancer that says welcome me and everything coming in. So we should tie that in. You can have the bird, that's fine. Like I said, I had to ask what's the deal with the crane, because I've lived here 20 years and nobody's ever mentioned why a bird is on the thing. So it's not published or anything. And it's like, okay. But on the other hand, the Alsatian dancers are also tied to Alsace and Germany. So I see both sides of the coin. I would see this more as a marker secondary to the emblem, the seal of the city. So possibly have the seal of the city as the starting beside, instead of the challenge coin, and then have that as a sub marker to direct people around historic Castroville.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh, no,
Let's
no,
wait till she's
no.
One thing I forgot.
Let's let her finish.
But yeah, first and foremost, I know Darren has good intentions, but he needs to pump the brakes. That way we do this right. We send it through the HLC and it says budgeted. I'm sorry, even though it's budgeted, I want to see the dollars. And what pot of money is it coming out of? That way there's CYA across the board. Okay.
The other thing, in doing this process, especially in the historic district, and a lot of cities do this that are historic, a QR code on a walking tour to drive revenue. Meaning there's a gunfight that happened in here, there's a gunfight across the street.
Yep.
All of that stuff is really cool history, and you put a QR code on that sign on the street, you have a built-in walking tour that is really pretty slick when you think about it.
Yeah.
That'd be my 2 cents.
That would be a separate effort, but I think it's worthwhile.
Well,
Yeah.
the QR code
It's kind of
on
cool.
the signage that's on the streets.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's very simple. And there's somebody, you go to our site and it tells you what happened on this day and then whatever.
We do have walking tour signs. Do they have a QR code already?
Some of them do, but we haven't built in the history to the address.
Okay.
It's not been put into a full-on
Which is
program yet.
pretty
It's something that's been discussed for a number of years about how you would increase that. Councilman Lee?
I had to chuckle that Councilman Martinez, is it a stork? Is it a seagull? Is it a
crane?
Like
Is it an egret? It's not an egret.
Huh?
We have egrets here.
Egrets.
But it's not an
yeah,
egret.
I mean, what is it? But yes, I've been to Alsace, our sister city, and they do in fact have those birds perched around town. Usually they're all sitting; they're not going anywhere. But let's see what the other groups come up with, and
agreed.
There's plenty of good ideas out there.
Darren, I have a question.
I know,
right, yeah, please.
I'd like to hear about birds and we were asked to come here, my wife, Dr. Ramirez, to join the board of the library.
Okay.
And is that gonna come up, or, I mean, we?
You know what?
It's not.
Oh,
I'm getting hungry.
Well, when I spoke or sent you an email, I asked that you come during citizens' comments. So, and the mayor may open it back up so that you could introduce yourself. Due to the fact that the listing on the agenda did not have the library board tonight. I sent that out to you, I guess it was Sunday, on an email.
So
It's on an email.
what I could do is, after we're done with this agenda item, when we're drawing to a close on that, then I'll open back up.
Close?
Yes.
I'm getting hungry.
All right.
So are we.
I'm so sorry. I just come.
We don't want him getting hangry. All right. Yeah. As soon as we're done with this item, then I'll open back up citizens' comments. Okay. You had a.
Can we have choices on the colors?
I think that's one of the things that I think. Yeah, I think that it's something that, again, once as it goes through these different processes, I think it's really good to have those choices and to have the open discussion. Anytime you change your built environment, I think that you need to do it very carefully and very slowly and very methodically. And that includes things like colors and shapes and which emblems are you using and which version, if you're going to use a stork, which version of the stork are you going to use? So yes, I think that's all worthwhile conversation.
Right now, we're drawing our color palette from the official seal that the council adopted. So that's where those colors are coming from when you see them.
All right, great. Any other questions on that input? Okay. All right, so the next item, I'm going to reopen citizens' comments. Would you like to speak for citizens' comments? Sorry about the confusion.
I'm Juliana Ramirez, and I've sent in some information to help you. I would like to be on the library board. Libraries are very important. America is one of the first countries to have free libraries. Your first library was actually started in Peterborough, New Hampshire in 1833. I am obviously not, I was born here in America, but I was raised in Africa and the Middle East. So that's why I speak a little differently. I have degrees. I am a clinical psychologist. I have two PhDs and a law degree, and I love the library. The library is the place where our history, our ideas, and books help us. They tell us our past, they tell us our future, they tell us how to think and how to see. I also write. I have books that are currently in our library, as a matter of fact. Wow. And I love the library. And I agree with Mr. Lee. Beth is amazing, and I'd like to be part of that.
Great. Well, thank you for stepping up. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. We're now going to close citizens' comments and allow you to get some food before you hurt us.
Yes. Go keep them in mind. I know it's a hard job.
Thank you, Sheena. I'll rely on you for help.
Yes. So again, we're not taking action tonight. We like to hear the applicants so that council can ask questions of the library and stuff. So it's great. Did anybody have any questions for her?
Just thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
I'm going to get a little nervous that we appoint a clinical psychologist to a board.
Perfect for this town, yeah.
I would prefer she be a city employee. Work on the people that work in this building.
Yeah.
Well,
She has to start with you,
for
Bob.
the military.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the Israeli military, for the American military. I worked for Kenneth Brace Fighters, and
Great.
I interviewed high-value teams before they came out of the field. I'm also a veteran of the IDF. I flew aircraft. I did my first carrier landing at 22.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome.
But
Pay the price for it now with their back.
Yeah.
But I love your accent, by the way. So
You know, Beth is great at recruiting, because I'm also a PhD retired academic, and she's trying to get everybody involved now in programs, especially adult education. We couldn't have enough adult education programs, so.
Yeah, one of the things I've given Beth, which you may not have seen yet, is I've written, because I'm neurospecific, I understand the brain as well as almost anybody. And I've written a whole, with Dr. Ray here, we've written a thing to help grandparents who are raising their grandchildren.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a whole program which the library is now interested in. We're going to try to put in place so we can pull in some of our elders.
Hondo has tried to recruit us.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, we're very close to Castroville. Y'all don't remember me at all. You do. We kept that pool open when the city was ready to close it. And I said, no, we're not going to close the pool in 98, 99, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I said, no, a young person had died in the pool, and so the state, you know, put a lot of restrictions. And I said, you know what? Let me do it. I'll form a private company, and I did. Started making some money for a couple of years just to say, wait a minute, that guy's making too much money. So they ran me out of here. I went to Hondo, made money there. Went to Divine. But anyway, yeah, true story.
But no, I think she'd be a wonderful asset because of your experience, one, and well-rounded experience. And then two, she could look outside the box as maybe different avenues for funding for building a new library.
Yes, I'm very, very focused on that.
I knew you would be. I knew.
Because we need to bring the children more.
Yes.
We need to do more for the children.
And for the adults, like you just said.
Yes,
I mean,
and for the adults.
everybody.
We have an aging population.
I am sorry to do this to you.
I'm sorry.
We're getting too far off the agenda, so
Okay.
we would love to have you back. We'll have on the next agenda for the actual decision. We'll move it closer to the front so you don't have to worry about him getting hangry.
April 22nd.
April 22nd. Great. Thank
Unfortunately,
you
I
for.
won't be at that one. I'll be in Japan visiting my son, but
Where's he at? Yokosuka?
Mhm.
I went to high school in Tokyo.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next item. Thank you so much. The next item is discussion and appropriate action on continuing the Simple City contract for the Unified Development Ordinance. And I want to start first by saying, Houston, thank you. I know that you had brought this up. I think that this is something that is absolutely something that we need to take a look at. If we look back, I know that we've had some, and I'm just introducing this item, and Scott will get into it in more detail, but the reason that we had engaged with Simple City in the very beginning, and the way that we had approached with them, if we can keep the conversations, if you guys would like to, thank you. So the reason that we had engaged with Simple City in the first place, I know that there are people that have had some personality conflicts with them. They've come up with some ideas that people didn't really like, but the fact is that they are professionals in what they do and they understand some of the implications. So when we went out to RFP for this, we had companies that said, we can rewrite your codes. We don't even have to talk to anybody. There don't have to be any public meetings. And we said, no, we don't want that. We wanted somebody that would be very heavily publicly engaged. And I know that there was some, it's always a hard process. It's always a hard process with somebody else coming in that's brand new. If you think about the people that have come here when they first came here, how much we, and I'm one of those, how much we didn't understand about the culture, how much we didn't understand about how things happened. And it takes time to learn that. So they had made some missteps and they had made some omissions. And but the fact is that the thing that they brought to the table as we've gone through this, I will stand behind the fact that they understand the implications of the decisions that you make. They understand the implications if you make the streets wider versus smaller. They understand the implications of how you design the city for interaction. And that was the reason that we had done that. It doesn't mean that they get a blank check for now and always. So we need to look at how do we close this out and still not lose the expertise to understand what are the implications of the decisions that we make here. And if I remind people, the reason that we began this process in the first place 3 years ago was because we were looking at what are the decisions that we're making, how do we understand the implications of those? And we wanted to bring in people that could give us some better insight, people that actually designed cities, that studied cities, and that this is something that they have tremendous experience in to help us understand what the implications of those decisions and those actions are. So I know that we like to have things all done by citizens, but sometimes we don't have the expertise to understand what the implications are, but we definitely have the insight into what is positive and what we agree with. So I just wanted to give that context to begin the conversation. Again, it doesn't mean an open check for now and always. And we need to figure out how to close this out and get it done without losing the insight of information through this avenue or through another avenue. So I'll let you take over the presentation on this.
Yeah, I don't have a presentation prepared. You have the backup documentation provided to you in your packets. We've provided the proposal for the extension of the contract, and we provided a copy of the original contract. This is a project that is over budget and over time. When this project was originally submitted, it was submitted with steps and what was going to be done when. Those steps have been followed. And we're at the point where all of the public comment period is closed. A draft document was provided. There was some follow-up to that draft. But then that turned into more and more policymaker input, which is what has led us to where we are today. I don't know when this is going to get adopted. It's being presented to the P&Z tomorrow. We've incorporated as staff and as consultants all of the comments that we received to date that have been voted on or discussed by both planning and zoning and the city council. So we believe that it's in its final form, absent some new policy direction that we have not yet received. So I think we're getting close, but We'll see what P&Z does with it tomorrow night. And then it'll come to council at the following meeting for your discussion and review. I believe the final draft is on the website. I've got to verify that. I know that's been provided to the policyholders, but one of the things we asked the staff is that it get updated on the website at the same time simultaneously. That didn't happen. We followed up again today to say, hey, is it out there yet? Because the last thing we want is people showing up tomorrow, and the same thing happened the last time they presented a draft. Is folks who were there who aren't on the policymaking side had spent valuable hours and time reviewing it and didn't realize they were reviewing an old draft. So we're working to make sure that doesn't happen again. But be that as it may, the final drafts have been shared with all the people who need to get them as far as the P&Z council are concerned. And then we want to get that available to the public as soon as possible. My concern as far as whether or not to extend the contract, again, at $20,374, that's the amount that you're over. That's less than 5%. That's what I expect an acceptable amount as far as a contract of this size. Typically, there is contingency. That contingency is anywhere from 10 to 15% a lot of times. Doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but it just is where we are, and I think it's a result of the process that we've all been a party to that has unfolded. My concern, if you choose not to extend the contract or to continue to use Simple City, is that we will still need to close things out with them. We'll need to get all of their deliverables, all of their documents. Right now, they are hosting through that social pinpoint site the document, the draft document, and all of that other information. We either need to get the login and ability to manipulate that information so that as changes continue, if they continue, we can, as staff, make those changes and continue to communicate with the public in the way that we have kind of built them up. Or we need to get all that data and then create our own site and then advertise and market that site so that the people understand this is now where you can go to look at this work that's in progress. So that's one concern I have. The other concern, obviously, is that we've been working with this team of consultants and our attorney to review the questions as they arise from policymakers. That's not going to go away. Your staff, while very capable, doesn't know the answer to all these, all the questions that arise, and we lean on the consultants who are more experienced in those areas to ask those types of questions. So even if the contract were to be discontinued, there would be a need to go get answers from somebody about some of these things, depending on what the questions are that get raised and whether or not your staff's able to answer those. And I just want to be candid about that because that need could continue to exist. But with an unknown outcome and without a definite outcome and a date, I mean, there is real risk to, okay, how do we stop a runaway train as far as in terms of expenses? And I think there's certainly some stopgaps that we can put in place, which is with either defining a new scope. The contract that's been presented to you is an a la carte option. In other words, it has some defined meetings, a couple of things that they're saying, well, we view these as things that would be needed, and here's the cost for that. They've said that they'll be willing to work off retainer. I think that was the amount was $3,000, and that'd give you 10 hours of work, I believe.
Roughly, depending on the expertise that was in there, they've got the hourly rates for each one of them.
Right, but they have so they've given you some options, but if you're concerned about kind of, again, getting a wrap and putting your arms around the cost, I think the suggestion I would make is let's define the scope of what it is you think is left to do, and then get them to provide a proposal for those fees, right? Or simply state that we're going to only approve this amount of additional work, or say, we'd like to see prior to you can continuing or doing any work on the city's behalf, we want to see a proposal or an estimate of those costs. Just like you would do a task order basis with a engineering group, you might have them on a master services contract, but each task order, they give you an estimate of those costs. Now, those task orders have a similar hourly fee at the end that says, if we exceed these estimates, here's what we'll charge you on an hourly basis. But they give you an idea. Here's how much it's going to cost. So those are just a couple of suggestions of ways you might try and control the cost and get the cost element under control. But that's that. Again, I think there are some concerns with just saying, well, we're done with them, because we aren't done with them. We've got we're almost there, but we've got hosting and we've got document preparation and completion that needs to be done. We don't have until that final document's adopted and we're done making changes to it, we don't have it.
All right.
You want me to go
Yeah, you brought it up, so please.
First, I want to clear the air. I asked for a simple agenda item. I did not recommend approval. Just from what it says in the agenda, that was not mine.
You didn't recommend what?
Sorry. Let me get up here. Is this working?
It is.
No.
Check. You guys hear it now? Is that good? I just want to make it clear that I thought we had been through the process with Simple City, and what appeared in our agenda was not what I recommended. I just wanted to have a discussion. I did not recommend approval.
Does it say you recommended approval?
Well, it doesn't, but it says in this that it's.
I move to approve.
I move to approve.
Yeah, that is just a recommended motion that staff provides, been requested
Right.
by council. So
Yeah.
that didn't
Okay.
imply that you said that.
All right.
You're good.
So it's very clear, you brought it up to say, we need to take a look at this.
Right.
Absolutely appropriate, and it's worth the discussion. And then they make their recommendation based on what they know about the implications.
Understood. Gotcha. First, I have questions, Scott. So in the contract that I read through today, I didn't see anywhere an accountability because I've been to most of those meetings. I've been to a lot of these meetings, and I saw mistakes and I saw omissions that when we get here, there were problems, with the document itself. And do we get any time back for having to redo things once we catch an issue? Was there anything in the contract? Because I could have missed it. But to me, that would be where I would start. That would be one thing. When we get a mistake, you can't bill us for those hours because that's not a completed contract, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
And was there anything in here that we have an accountability to, they have to give us? Because that I didn't see it in the contract. Sorry, I'm trying to lean in. There's nothing in here?
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Okay.
I don't believe it's in there, no.
The hourly rates now, when you add those up, that's a lot of money. Now, granted, they're not all happening at once, right? When I look at $300 for urban design, $220 for illustrative rendering staff, that kind of thing. When we get that bill, do we have this billed out like a lawyer would?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's only for 10 hours though, right?
Yeah, well, that's the hourly rate when you look here.
Yeah, but when they submit, if the question is like, for instance, the portion of the 20,374 where they're over, we have a detailed, here's what we did for those.
Super bill.
For those hours.
Okay, all right. And from the experience that I had from sitting out there, candidly, I found that a lot of times Mr. Lewis was discourteous and disrespectful to the citizens of Castroville. And that still bugs me to this day.
Agreed.
And so it was hard for me to go further with somebody that's going to look me in the eye and do those things to our citizens. If it would have been me, if it had been my call, I would have fired him on the spot. Because we're not paying, I just don't think we ought to pay for that attitude. Secondly, if tomorrow it's going up before P&Z for a vote to recommend to us, right? And I know you tried to answer that. I don't see a need to keep the contract or extend it, because to me, that tells us the document's done, right? P&Z is going to vote on it tomorrow. Is that right?
Hmm?
They
have the option to. They have the option to.
Vote will be.
Right.
That's the issue.
But if that's, why do we need them after that? Closing it out, didn't we already pay for that at $520,000?
Did we already pay for what?
The closeout, I think in your opening, you said we need to close it out, get the document, those things. But to where I'm thinking $520K should have paid for that. They owe us that.
You're talking about, so you're saying
we
in
have
the
a
scenario,
document. We've given it to P&Z. P&Z is going to vote. They're going to give it to us. We're done. Now, if we need consultants because the ledge is going to change the game for us, I get some of that. But we don't need to extend a contract for that.
Yeah, if it's possible, it's very possible there'll be few or no hours billed. Now they are planning on being at the planning and zoning meeting tomorrow, so there'll be hours associated with their attendance at that meeting.
Will be billed for.
There will be, and there is a planning meeting prior to that meeting where they'll bill us for the hours for that they spend with staff talking about the meeting that they're going to have that evening.
Right.
So there are some billable hours that I expect that we'll still get, but I at this stage, I don't know how much that's going to add up to, because it really does boil down to how much additional work needs to be done. But I'm with you. If it's a minimal amount of work, it should be a fairly minimal amount of money.
Right.
So the closeout portion of it, if I understand correctly, if there's no additional change, if there's additional changes, then we can leverage them to understand what the implications of those changes would be. If there's no additional changes and P&Z says, yes, we approve this, it goes in front of council, we say we approve it, we would want to have them in case somebody from P&Z and in case somebody from council had further questions on some of those implications, just like we would with our attorney or with an engineer. But other than that, we should be able to close it out. They hand over all of the CAD stuff. They hand over all of the deliverables. We put it onto our site. We don't need the social pinpoint site. I'd be very hesitant about changing the location of the interaction, the draft, because people are now accustomed to going that. So if we change it, then people could misunderstand why we're doing that.
And we've already, I want to chime in. We've already paid for the hosting of that, I think through July. So that hosting fee
the site.
Paid. Yeah, but if they have to spend hours updating or changing any of the documents, if those are billable hours, and I'm using the word if because I think you bring up some valid points, Houston, about the contract and errors and omissions and other things where they shouldn't be charging us for corrections they had to make through their own document.
Right.
But be that as it may, if there's any billable hours related to that social pinpoint, those would be billable. But I don't know that would be the case.
Okay.
Hosting fee's been paid.
Okay, that's all I have.
Is that clear? No more questions?
No more questions.
Okay.
All right. When did the contract expire?
I don't believe, you have a copy of the contract in front of you in the deal, so I don't think it had the expiration date. It had deliverable items, scope items in there.
Right.
And how it spelled out how many meetings they were going to do and what their process is going to be. Well, we reached the end of that process in December.
Okay.
So December effectively
was the end.
Which meeting was the first meeting or second meeting in December? But
December we only had one meeting.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
I think it was a December meeting where they effectively had done
completed.
What they were supposed to do.
Okay. So when did we hit the 500,000 limit?
It should have been in December.
Okay. So why wasn't it brought to council that the contract had hit its max for we could have decided whether or not to stop work until we make sure the decision to pay extra funds?
Yeah, that's on me. I didn't bring it to you all. I asked for a proposal from them to continue the contract. I'll have to look at when they actually provided me with that proposal. But looking at the situation, where we were at, the fact that we still needed their work, again, in my experience of contracts of these magnitude, a 5% shift or a 5% increase is not.
But we still should have been briefed on this.
I get it.
Because it is an impact. It is citizens' money. The citizens are, okay, we spent $500,000 and now we've gone over budget. Why? Did council know? Was council give the approval? So we're going to get called to the carpet because it's something that should have been brought to us. And that way we could talk to citizens as to why we busted the 500,000. And this is the explanation. That way we're kept in the communication loop type thing. So you mentioned that it gave me the impression of what you just briefed, that we don't have administrative rights to everything dealing with this document. If it's on their site, all the supporting all the work and everything. We should have administrative rights to that
Well, the
because
social-
it's
well,
our document.
Okay, but there still are consultants doing work on our behalf. So the social pinpoint, for instance, that's their login and their information. Now, when they deliver the project to us and it's completed, we will have all that. But it's not completed, right? Because it's still in process. We still
That's not our
have
fault.
a draft out on the website.
It kind of
Still have
is.
Policy
Well,
decisions to be made.
let's be clear about this. The reason that we've gone over is because we required additional interaction. We had a lot more citizens' questions than they were accustomed to. They continued to show up and provide insight and guidance. And to Matt's credit, he did send the other Lewis over to Zach to do some of that interaction to calm that down. So,
But still, we should
yeah,
have
no,
known that.
yeah, totally agree.
It's all part of the
But
communication.
your question about the deliverables, the things that don't belong to us, as I read through this, what I understood were the things that don't belong to us. My social pinpoint site doesn't. That's part of their functional interaction.
Right.
The deliverable, one of the things that we insisted from the very beginning is that we get the electronic copy of the document that they have, and we will get the electronic copy so that as we go forward, when additional changes are made, unlike the CZO where we'd have to go through and hand jam an individual copy, we would have the editable copy with the software that we'd be able
To
to
amend it and everything. Okay, but.
Well, with the ability to get that software.
Well, but that way, because we should have administrative rights for anything dealing with this
Absolutely.
project.
Can I clarify? So Deborah's mentioned something, and I was assuming y'all know this, and maybe you do, but just for everybody's benefit, this $500,000 is not for the UDO. It is for the UDO, the comp plan, the downtown master plan. It's for every element that was in that contract. So it's a lump sum cost. The element that has gone over is the UDO. That's the one we're focusing on because that's the one that's not completed. The comp plan hasn't been adopted, right? It's still got to come back for adoption by council.
Right.
We took care of the downtown plan. So those things are still hanging out there to be completed. But really, the UDO is the one that is still not adopted.
Right.
Still taking time.
Right. So it just, dealing with contracts and everything in my years, anytime that we hit a limit on a contract, it wasn't decided at the lowest level to go ahead and push on and pay.
This isn't the lowest level. This is a city administrator you've empowered to make those choices. And we've done this on other contracts. So I apologize if y'all felt like you should, if the council tells me collectively you wanted a heads up that they were going over this contract, then I apologize. Because in other contracts we've done in the 4 years I've been here, this has been something that's happened several times.
I understand that.
I have a discretion up to $25,000 in any type of contract like this. So I wasn't concerned about it, but now the reason it is in part because I agreed this has come to the point where we really need to have a conversation, and that's why we have a conversation tonight.
Right. But we have citizens that come to us, and this is a very contentious item to where people want to know what is the money going towards, and if we go over, because they're going to approach us outside of this area. Well, why did it go over $24,000?
That's because we got comments past the time period when they're supposed to be collected. It's pretty simple.
But still, if we were brought into that conversation, we could have settled down some of the irateness.
So we got a lot of back and forth, but you're saying the same thing, and that is that when contracts go over, it would be very beneficial for, again, you have some leeway in that, but it's a good idea to bring that back and just say, this is what's happening with the contract, or as we near the end of the contract to inform us, there's a good possibility that this is going to go over. So I think that is something that if you need to have a specific vote on that portion of it, I think what you'll get from council across the board is this is something that we feel would be important to do.
That's all I got.
And that's really on any contract.
Yeah.
If we go over on anything, it's good to know ahead of time. It's good to be aware of it because once it's already happened, it's too late for us. And we really need to be able to, at a policy side, know that stuff. Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
All right, cool.
I have one thing I
Another one?
forgot. So today, I don't know if you're aware, there was an email that went out from Simple City at 10:44, posting the new document, the new UDO complete, saying that the P and Z meeting was tonight, April 8th.
No.
Yes.
No, no, you're asking if I was aware of it. No,
No, okay.
I'm not aware of that. Who did it go to? Who did this email go to?
It was everybody that was on there, I think.
Their
Yeah.
email list.
Yeah. Just my point. I don't have to belabor that.
Yeah.
Anybody that is here for that tonight, understand that it is tomorrow.
I didn't put an agenda up for tonight for UDO.
Right. Yeah, let's send out a
I didn't get an email.
let's send out an update. Let's do that first thing in the morning. Make sure that that gets out. I think that I got one on that as well.
I wasn't copied on it, so I was not aware of that taking place.
Let's just make sure that we get that out first thing so that people do have the opportunity to come to that tomorrow night.
But
Yeah.
true, but to review that document, and if it was tonight, we had 7 hours to do it.
Sure.
Which is not enough.
Right. Now you have an extra 24.
Right. If you show up for the meeting.
And I'm not, yeah. But the things that have been incorporated into this, these are all of the items that we've been talking about for a long time. Hold on. So I've heard a couple of things saying, it's looking surprisingly like the CZO, and it's supposed to. And the changes that they're making, it's supposed to look like the CZO, where the protections that we want to take for the citizens are in place. That was done on purpose. I'm sorry, go ahead.
My thing is, I work.
Mhm.
I look Sunday 3 times. I look at 10 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 1 o'clock. Because Sunday afternoon is when I would be able to review this.
Mhm.
I work all day tomorrow. I worked all day today. They came when I was at work today. I'm at this meeting tonight. When I get up tomorrow morning, I have to do work at 7:30 and back to meeting tomorrow night. So how many hours do you expect me to review the changes? Because there's quite a few changes.
Mhm.
So in my defense, I think tomorrow night, the thing should be said by the staff that you did not give the citizens enough time putting this on to make any kind of decisions. Because there's no way.
And I would say you should come to the P&Z meeting tomorrow night and bring that
I
up.
think
Absolutely.
As a council and as a city, that's common sense. And you said there's no rush, but there's no rush. And in my opinion, tomorrow night, when they come and make their recommendations, we apologize. It did not get on the website until yesterday. We know people are working, and you can't just go over it in 4 or 5 hours and see it. And so that's my recommendation.
And that's something I would absolutely recommend.
I think it's from you too, Mayor, because you keep saying there's no rush.
No, I don't think that there's a rush. I think there is a rush to get this closed out appropriately and completely.
Yeah, there's no
And
time.
yeah, there's nothing that should be jammed through. There's no quick decisions that we need to make, because that gives people enough time to understand what the implications are. Absolutely.
But it's a big document. Even the 10, 15 pages, or whatever, it takes you time to go through it to make sure all those were put in there.
Yep.
Like they were supposed to. And somebody that works and it comes out today, there's
Totally
no
understand.
time to have enough time to go over it.
It is still on the agenda for tomorrow, the way that it is. And so I would encourage you to show up and say the same thing to them. And I believe that if I see from P&Z, what I've also seen from council is that you don't have to jam something up their nose to make something happen. You just say, just like you did, say, we want more time and we would appreciate this. And let's work together on figuring out how to make this done, make this appropriate and done within what you're comfortable with. All right.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Where is this listed on our agenda or on our website that says tonight? I did not put up an
That
agenda.
was, no, that was what they're saying is the email that came out from Simple City to all the people that signed
Well,
up.
but I thought someone out here said it was up on our website. And I'm not sure, I did not put up an agenda except for tomorrow night for the public planning.
So it's
Okay.
so it goes back to
Okay.
that pinpoint.
Right.
Well,
It wasn't you.
Which we don't.
Okay, well, and I did get that email from the building block, and I sent an email back today and said their meeting is tomorrow night. Now, I guess that's what everybody else got, but I thought, no, I'm looking on our website going, where is it? Sorry.
Well, and I think that your point with this is it's not the CastrovilleTX.gov, but it is the the website that we've been using. And so if people are
Yes.
going there for their updates,
I
we need to
did
make
send
sure.
an
it's
email back today, though, whoever
Okay.
sent it to me and said that it's for January 9th, because I guess I was on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we just make sure that that is corrected as quickly as possible and that the notice goes out? Valerie, you had a question.
Yes, I did look at it this morning when it came out. And I didn't have a lot of time. I spent maybe 20 minutes. And there's so much on there.
Yeah, I get it.
And still so much that we talked about that nobody wanted. And I don't know why those things have never been deleted. And at the same time, if they made changes, why couldn't they just put those in the front of the document and say, this is the newest things, instead of having to go through the whole thing like a maze?
They did provide that.
There's a changing, a track changes log.
Right.
That is on the website.
Right. It should be easy to find. I mean, if you're getting a notice, you should be able to find that stuff and not go and hunt
See if I
back.
can find it real quick and show it to y'all, but, yeah.
But again, I don't know.
Okay, so we're gonna.
On there that we talked about permanent kiosks in Houston Square, it's still on there. Why?
Okay, we're going to bring this back to a council conversation, and then I'll open it up a little bit within reason. So I'm sorry that council has not yet had a chance to discuss this. All right, Councilman King.
I do like Houston's comment that, I do like Houston's comment that if they did some early on mistakes, then I think it would be a good discussion with them that it would maybe they need to think about looking into that. And also, I totally agree with, as we've all talked about it at City Council, and I've mentioned it to Matt also, that, he did come across very aggressive to people's comments. I told him to his face that he was taking too much of a pride of ownership of this thing and they needed to listen. So that would be a good discussion to have with him.
So that discussion has been had, and I think he has changed his demeanor, and I think that's also a reason why you see Zach saying some things he says. But yeah, that's been a concern of ours, and that has been addressed with him.
And part of it is the again, when I know we were telling them things and they just kind of weren't listening to what we were telling them, which I'm assuming there probably was some wasted effort there. I do think it would be a disaster at this 11:50 at night, 10 minutes before midnight, to switch and drop them, and we would for city staff to pick this up or anybody else to pick this up, you're talking about very, very expensive to try to reinvent the wheel, in my opinion. So I think we do need to finish this thing up. But again, I guess what I'm recommending is go have a hard talk with them as far as, should they look at their invoices a little bit more careful. But at the same time, I do not think that we just drop this thing and say, oh, we're not going to pay you and go forward. And as you admitted, and I agree, that you do have the authority to extend contracts, and we're within that. Should we have gotten a little bit more notice on it? Probably, but again, things are moving targets, and as you say, this is not the first time that we've had issues like this, and it's never been such a contentious thing because from the very beginning, this was a contentious thing. There was we've all sat in these meetings, and from the very beginning, people say, "Why are you wasting this money?" And why we, on our standpoint, me, Phil King, I was just being told by everybody, you need to protect us from the growth to the east. You need to protect our built environment. And that's what people have been telling me for the last 10 years. And this, in my mind, was the best way to handle that issue. So that's all I want to say.
All right. Councilman Murphy.
So council has given Mr. Dixon authority to spend up to $25K without our approval. He used it, and I think that was appropriate. If we as a council feel like we need to modify that or put boundaries on it, then we should have that discussion as a future agenda item rather than as a reactionary piece of conversation on random agenda items. On this particular one, Simple City has not been perfect. Some of their ideas have not fit. Some of their interactions with citizens were not appropriate. However, overall, I think they've done very good work, including they've been very accommodating on the substantial rework caused by a shift in planning and zoning and city council makeup very late in the process. In fact, basically after the process they bid to do was already done. We are way over the 10-month schedule, and that is our fault. In November, we announced that we weren't going to be finishing this last year, which is when their contract ended. We announced we were going to blow the schedule. And so it's not Simple City that has overrun. It is very much us. We have extended the process several times. Council and P&Z were still requesting new changes in February and March. We were requesting changes to items we'd already been seeing for months. Last month. As someone who does consultant work, I know firsthand that it is most assuredly not free to just keep kicking the can down the road and requesting additional meetings and changes. Considering how far over schedule we are, I'm very impressed with where the budget is. I am open to this a la carte contract as presented as a way to cover a few hours left to close things out. Although if we feel like we're not going to be finishing this month, maybe I would be open to an alternative framework that fixes that schedule and the according price.
Thank you. And just to clarify, I think what we were talking about is not a change. It's very appropriate for somebody in that position with that budget to have that discretionary spending ability, still with the accountability to council. And Scott's been, to his credit, he has been very open about when he's done that. When he's had to do that, he's brought it to us and said, by the way, this was within my limit, but I wanted to let you know. So he's been very, very forthcoming. But I think that it's important for us to remind ourselves as a policy that it's good to know about those things ahead of time. So it's only a slight shift in what he's been doing.
Yeah, at no time was I saying limiting Scott.
Right.
I just wanted us to have the information because citizens want to know why.
Yeah, just having it early.
Well, and I'll say this, I didn't, this is why I made the recommendation I did about like trying to put some arms around the cost. Because when we had the conversation with Simple City and whatever time frame that was, I'll go back and check my emails, but I want to say it was January about there, where they notified us, hey, we're at the end of our contract. And I said, okay, well, I need a proposal. We need to see what this looks like. We were not asking for task orders and saying, okay, now how much is this going to cost us? So while I'm not shocked at the total that we've paid, it's not as if they came to me with individual invoices and said, here, sign here. They were just going to our meetings, providing the consulting services, and then submitted, I think, one invoice, and that's the amount. So the one invoice they submitted. So I don't want to give the impression that I was aware of how much this would cost, et cetera. I'm a little surprised it came in at what it is at. It came in at the price it came in at. And I think Houston raises a very good concern that I need to follow up with them on, which is, going back and looking at their past billings and some of the mistakes that were made, are they including those hours to fix the mistakes that they made? Because they shouldn't be. And that may be an opportunity for us to scrape back some of this cost. So I will have those conversations with them because I see this is an issue that we need to try and get resolved. Anyway, trying to clarify that.
Great, thank you. All right, Councilman Lee.
Yes, same tune, different players. I can't remember too many contracts the city's had that the city came out ahead because there was always some cost overrun. And
yes,
thank you. To break that off. Yeah. I haven't heard anything about Simple City being willing to do some work without additional funds. And normally when these contracts have been approved by council, here's the cost of the contract and a not to exceed amount. Was that not the case in this contract?
I'll have to go back and look.
Okay.
Let's keep the comments to a minimum,
We
please.
could go look at the minutes from the meeting of whatever.
I mean,
the 20.
I've got 200 meetings in this room, and we did a lot of contracts, and it was always, here's the contact price and a not to exceed price. So you had some leeway. What the situation is now, the administrator always had the ability to spend up to 25 from my familiarity, 5,000 or whatever, an individual item, not to extend something that's already under a contract. It was like I would do it was there for ordinary kinds of expenditures, not something like this. But to me, this whole issue of where we are on the money should have come to council long, long ago. And someone should have been watching the work funds balance of this whole project to say, hey, you've got about X number of hours left to do this. I think it's a mistake to have them come tomorrow to another meeting that they don't have the money to be reimbursed with, because it looks to me like you've pretty much gone to that point. I have been keeping up with the UDO. To me, it's got so many loose ends. It is not ready to have a public hearing by planning and zoning to send forward to us. And that we really have no idea how much work is going to be left price-wise to finish this out. We've just got another open thing to spend 20, 30, 40, 50,000. Who knows? We don't know. And so I'm saying I would never agree to this until we have more accurate figures about where we are, what it's going to take to get this finished, so we have a grasp of it and we can put a limit on that money. But everything I've seen, this staff, Brianna, bless her heart, maybe she's taken a rest. She seems to be the one that tells me that she has done most of the work, along with the mayor, doing comparisons. Where the heck was Simple City to do this stuff since they heard us from the very beginning? We did it in-house with our staff. And so there's no way that I would agree to anything to give them another nickel until we have a better grasp on what's left to be done and what the cost projections are. And we agree to that, it's going to have a fence around it. And if they can't meet it, take a hike.
Great. All right. Any other discussion? I would encourage you, just to be clear, I would encourage you to continue to talk to P&Z members, to city council people. If you have things that have not been included, make sure that you're getting those to the representatives that represent you. That's part of the process. You communicate with them. They make sure that it's happened. We hold people accountable. It's the best way to do this is collectively together. We lock arms and we get it fixed. You had a question.
I have the motion here. A motion was made by Councilman Carey and duly seconded by Councilman Merz to approve the contract for professional service in Simple City for the development of the Unified Development Ordinance, including downtown master plan and comprehensive plan update, not to exceed $500,000. A vote was taken 5-0.
There you go.
All right.
Not to exceed.
Thank you.
And I agree with you about the contract.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so what would you like to do? You want to make a motion?
I might make a motion not to extend.
Okay,
I'll second.
great. Further discussion?
Yes, sir. I would not make the motion to not extend. Well, that is the only motion we can make, to extend or not extend.
But you can have the conversation.
I understand. I think we need to get additional information from them to know what costs are left, okay? And we get some pretty darn close figures to that, and then come back to give additional funds. But until that happens, I wouldn't expend, as we read and you voted on, $500,000. If there was going to be something that needed to go beyond that, it should have been brought up in the contract itself, that there was a leeway. And I understand that there's always unexpecteds come up, but they're professionals. This is what they do. They came to us
I get that.
at your request and said, here's what it's going to take.
Okay, so would you recommend a modification to the motion?
The motion was to
You have
not
to vote on
accept.
Right.
Well, my motion, I don't know if you could make this modification, because I'm saying bring back.
He can ask.
To table it.
Yeah, you can ask him to make a modification, and if he says no, then it stands as it is. We'll vote on it, and it can either get voted down and resubmitted, or it would get
Well,
approved.
then I would say table this until you have discussion with them.
That's not a modification.
No, what I'm saying is, if you would make a different recommend, this is why we have discussion after the motion and the second. If you have a recommendation for Houston, since he made the motion, say, would you consider doing this? And if he says yes, then he would modify it, and then Sheena would have to.
So you're basically saying if I made the motion not to approve the extension until Simple City and staff came back with more precise figures, something like that.
I have one comment on that. To me, I think we ought to have a credit. And we haven't let Scott go negotiate that for the mistakes that we've already paid for.
Correct.
So before we do that, I would rather give Scott the ability to go negotiate on our behalf.
Okay.
And now with no more money, just like boom, 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 here's what it cost us in this contract, you billed us for it. We should get X for it.
Okay.
You withdraw?
Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, so I guess what I would recommend to to Houston and Sheena is that you withdraw the motion, and we just give Scott instructions, which we have, that he needs to bring it back to us at the next meeting.
I request not at the next meeting since I'm not going to be here. I request for the first meeting in May. That way we have a full seat to make decisions on behalf of all citizens. That's my request.
Okay. So you made the motion. You have the ability to modify it if Sheena is amenable to that.
Yeah, I have one question for Scott.
Oh, and then let's hear from him first. Sorry.
So to understand what it would take to close this contract, to finish it, to get what you say we need, right? I want to understand that number, and then I would ask, okay, here are the mistakes that we've endured for the last 3 years. We think they're worth that. You need to finish this, So because I feel like we have a credit.
I understand.
Okay.
Wait, let's.
I was going to say, I think there's two numbers we need to know, right? What is the closeout? What is the additional cost? If it was approved tomorrow and at the next meeting, what is the cost to close it out, and has that already been covered? And then essentially, what is the cost of every additional round of meetings and changes that we decide to undergo, right? Because they can't give us a fixed cost to complete if we don't tell them how many more rounds there's going to be. And so the way to do that would be say, yeah, but if they don't know how much work we're going to have, because there have been corrections, but there have also just been changes. Where we said one thing, and then after months and multiple hearings, we said, well, we want to change to a completely different thing. And that's fine, we can do that, but that costs money.
But their contract said not to exceed.
That was a council action that council voted not to exceed. I don't know what standard policy is with that. When we say not to exceed and it exceeds, then is that like, I truly don't know what our policy is.
Can I just finish what I was saying?
Yeah.
Which is, we need to know, essentially, if it were approved this month with no further meetings, what's the cost to close out? And then separately, what's the cost of every round of hearings and changes we choose to do in the future? I think that's two separate numbers we need to know.
And then with Houston's recommendation to look for credit for mistakes.
Yes.
All right, so do you want to withdraw your motion? That way they can get us all that information before we can get it.
Sure, I withdraw.
All right, and I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
So the point of clarification I want to seek is, currently we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. I'll change that to a meeting to discuss negotiating their contract. And if I'm understanding correctly, if they intend to bill us for their time, then I'm going to disinvite them from the meeting they plan to attend tomorrow night. Correct?
Yes.
Do you want, if planning and zoning has questions about implications of any changes that they might recommend, would you like to have them there for that?
That's us paying for them.
$300 an hour, and they charge us for drive time.
Plus travel, plus whatever, whatever they're able to bill us for, yeah.
But you're actually talking about maybe even if it's $5,000 for one meeting to see how is this going to extend on, you're talking about $5,000. And again, that's way above and beyond what their effort is going to be tomorrow.
Right.
That is just pennies to the whole contract. But we can't stop the contract. We can't stop the effort. We need to finish it up. And if tomorrow, the P&Z meeting, they feel they can finish it up,
But we don't know what it's gonna cost. That's the problem. We don't know.
well, he'll give
Hold
us
on.
that at the next meeting.
All right. Sorry, there was a,
Having them zoom in, I have to look at how we would do that, but I need to have a conversation with my staff about what we anticipated Simple City's involvement to be. My recollection from the last time they were here, they provided some clarifying comments from time to time, but a lot of it was not new information. I mean, there was a lot of their other conversation that was just added on to the knowledge we already knew some of that, and it was just kind of reiterating what was already being said by either a P&C member or a council member. So it wasn't particularly additive. My big concern is more about what is it? Is there something technical that they know that we wouldn't? And I think those things can be resolved with a phone call or some other method.
you could also, just like when we have questions for you, and we have had times when we have not had our attorney present, and you've said, this is something beyond my knowledge, beyond my scope, we will come back to you.
Right.
So I think that would be acceptable.
I agree.
Yep.
Do you have, Darren, I think.
Lori had a question. Hold on one second, Mickey.
Are you going to open for
No. No, but
Can I ask my question?
sure.
Can I just, Mr. King, I don't think anybody's dropping anything. I think they provided a service and they received education. No, that's the first thing. And number two, as far as it coming tomorrow, Brianna asked, answer most of the questions.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we were just talking about. For sure.
And I totally agree with you now that it's understood that if they're just a phone call away and they're open for that phone call, but I don't want the P&Z to be asking a question and Brianna says, man, I don't know the answer to that, and then you don't have Simple City there to answer.
Yeah. But the probability, what we were just talking about, the probability is if there's a question that comes up like that, just like we've done in other things, she can then go and consult with them in a scheduled meeting so that we're not leaving them on call.
I agree.
Right.
So, yeah.
You're right. It's cheaper.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. I'll allow one more. We're going to close this out then.
I'm a certified purchasing manager in the private sector. It's totally different than the public. I would highly recommend that the council consider consulting legal counsel, because the contract, as was approved, as we heard, was not to exceed. Additional funds have been paid. There's some implications legally that the contract's been extended by that effort. I don't know who the project manager of this was, or is, or the scope of work, but it has fallen into despair.
Thank you.
You should consult him before you go on.
Thank you. All right. We're going to close this out for now.
I think Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Respectfully, could we ask those people speaking from the audience to go to the microphone?
Yeah.
Because she's got to make minutes and can't hear a
Sure.
word they said. And
So, and I'm giving, so just to be clear, because this process has been, it's been tough. And so this is not going to be a normal thing. It's not normally an audience participation thing. This is a council meeting. But I've opened it up because we've had a lot of these. The problem was when it was completely closed off, we had no communication. And the problem is if we open it up totally, then it becomes a free for all. And so we've got to find a balance in between that. I was giving a little bit of leeway for that, but I think that we've got the points. I think we're all on the same page. And Valerie, I'm sorry, we're going to close this out for now. And it is not the end of the conversation. You are absolutely encouraged and welcome to call us outside of this, to have this conversation. It doesn't need to be within the council meeting itself. Yes, there is. It is already, I can tell you afterward, it's already scheduled. So yes, we need to hold that. Okay, so we're going to come back to council. So we are giving direction.
There's no motion.
No motion.
The motions were rescinded. I've got the clarity that I needed, so I'll
Okay.
have that conversation. I've already sent 2 emails over sitting here to the Simple City team.
as long as, as well as the acknowledgement that, and again, you've done a really good job of this on most things, but like across the board, if we're nearing completion on a contract that council's made aware. Okay.
Bring it back on the 13th of May.
So yeah, if you missed that, what we said was that there was no motion, there was no vote. It was direction to understand what the finish out of the contract is, to close out what has already been done, to investigate credit for the mistake corrections, if that is available, and then an itemized estimation of if there's a meeting, what is that going to cost? So we understand without just a blank check what might still be involved with this, so that we can have the consultation when we need it, and aren't just paying them to come and hang out. All right? Is that clear? Everybody in agreement?
Yes, that would include the closeout cost, right?
That was the first item that was on there. Yep. I can say it again.
Got a dead ear over here.
That's all right. All right. Next item then is consider and take appropriate action on an application submitted for an open seat on the Historic Landmark Commission. Deborah?
Well, there's several different boards, and unfortunately on the agenda program, it didn't generate it off. The rest of them will be including Ms. Ramirez next meeting. But we do have one for Mary King. When we originally had a position open on the HLC board, Ms. King and Ms. Marchman had put their applications in together, and the council chose to put Ms. Marchman on. And so since she has been moved up into the full board position, we do have an alternate position open. And so Ms. King does wish to be considered for the alternate position. And since she had been in previously, her submission, we keep the applications. So it's up to y'all, but we do have an alternate position on the Historic Landmark Commission open.
I thought you have an open.
Oh, we have
It's
an
a-
open.
No, there's an open one.
Alternate.
Do I have more? I'm sorry.
No,
You
position
don't have an
number
alternate,
5.
you only have an open.
That's
Time out.
Priscilla.
No.
We have a permanent position.
Yeah.
Cindy Maloney moved down.
Yeah.
Where am I at?
Alternate.
So after all that speech, ignore me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The other alternate, then Houston stepped off.
I apologize. I guess I'm thinking that Houston's still there. So we do have an alternate position
You're
and
here.
an open position.
No, we don't.
No.
We don't have an alternate anymore?
No.
Okay, forget it.
Stepped down to alternate, and Tracy stepped
I'm so sorry. Okay, we have a full board position. It's good until October 2025. It's up to you if you wish to extend that for an additional 2 years. We have done it in the past since it's close to it. It's totally up to you, but we do have the position number 5 that is open on the full board.
And none of our alternates want to step up into it?
We just put Ms.
Maloney down.
Maloney down. And Ms. Schott, the last we talked to her, each time she has not requested to be up.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. She'd prefer to stay alternate.
Okay.
After all that, I'm sorry. I had it in my head about alternates.
Okay. All right. So then we didn't hear about this. We didn't talk about this last time, did we?
No.
Okay. So let's.
She was on I think in my write-up, I believe she came, y'all spoke about this, the position originally of the alternate position. It was back in, I want to say September.
Okay.
Yes.
So we did talk about it back then. Just because we've said before we don't vote on it the same day that we're hearing about it, I would recommend that we wait till the next one, but I would accept if somebody wanted, since she's a known entity and she's already been introduced, I would accept a motion to approve. Or if you would rather stick with, because it's not a policy, but it's a best practice that when we hear about a new board member, that we wait on that for the next meeting. That gives us a chance to, to think about any kind of implications or anything like that. What had happened was a few years ago, there were some kind of, somebody showed up for a meeting and was upset about something. They got put onto a board and they never showed up. And so this was really to put a kind of a little stopgap so that we can have that discussion with the people and just kind of slow roll that so that we're not just kind of willy-nilly appointing people.
Well, and the reason why,
Stay with that, yep.
Well, the reason why I put on here a possible action, because she was considered in September.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason, because otherwise I would have said, come back.
And that's why I was saying, I think that there's a little bit of leeway here, but I think that it would be better to err on the side of caution and just put it off till next one.
Because it doesn't want
It's
to
not an
show
official
data.
process, but it is, yeah, it's a good policy to have.
She'll come 3 times.
Councilman Lee?
Never mind.
Okay, all right. Then we are through the agenda and
What
adjourned.
about the other boards?
No, they're not.
No, they're
on
not-
this.
they're not
That's why I'm
noticed on
saying
here, yeah.
She's the only one that was to be considered.
She'll have them noticed on the next meeting. All right. We're through the agenda and adjourned at a balmy 7:49.
That makes sense.
I wish we could average these out. Oh. Put them on the thing.
Houston, can I borrow